Apart from other things, I've run some 200 plus meditation retreats in the last 35-40 years, and in this time and with all the groups that have come through, I've had a lot of experience and gathered a lot of understanding of the real nature of meditation as opposed to what we as a species have done with it. Really, there is only two types of meditation. There is the meditations that are popular and well known to society, and these are the meditations based on using techniques. So these are thought-based meditations. When I say thought-based, if you are concentrating on your breathing, you are thinking about your breathing. If you are imagining something, imagining is another form of thinking. If you are trying to achieve something through your meditation, then you are not necessarily intentionally, but definitely you are focused on and holding the attitude or the sense of achieving that result. If you are mindful, if you're using mindfulness, then in the mindfulness you are mindful of something. Mindful meaning nothing more than thoughtful. You're thinking. If you're using a Vipassana technique, then you are again thinking, not necessarily descriptive thinking, but focusing is thinking, as the activity of thinking, of focusing on a part of your body or something else. In the world of meditation, it has become mostly a fantasy. And the trickery of thinking is that you don't realize the fantasy that you're creating. So what is the fantasy that we're creating when we're using particularly any religious technique? That means any Buddhist technique, any yogic technique, any Christian technique, any religious technique is founded in and embodies the belief system and the intentions of that religion and what that religion places importance on. Therefore, you'll find that the thinking that is involved in that meditation, the ideals and the intentions in that meditation, produce a certain feeling in the person practicing that meditation. So the curious thing about this is that by producing the certain feelings in the person who's practicing that meditation, you achieve this through actually producing the same experiences in that person. So when you are practicing a meditation to achieve a certain state, a certain experience, you are changing your natural state, the way you actually are, into the state which is the product of that approach or that meditation technique. Now, the problem with this is you're completely falsifying yourself, but because it's very difficult to see that the experience that you're achieving is just a fabrication, just a thought-induced fabrication. And once you achieve that experience, you don't realize that the achieving of that experience, which is just imagined actually, is then fortifying or confirming the beliefs of that particular system in which you're meditating. And so without realizing, to practice a meditation technique, you are unintentionally, or maybe intentionally, but for most people unintentionally, indoctrinating yourself with the atmosphere, with the thoughts, and with the outcome, which is the feeling of that particular flavor of tradition. So you'll notice that if you come into contact with a Buddhist, you will notice that a Buddhist has a certain vibe, a certain feeling to them. Why is that all Buddhists have a certain feeling to them? Because essentially they are taking on the same thoughts and ideals and thinking patterns that each one of them are using. So the group of people are creating the same feeling as a result of the way they're thinking, the things they think about, and especially from the techniques that they use to induce hypnotic experiences. which they call meditation states. The other thing is, you look at a group of Christians who have a certain set of ideals, so they think in a certain way, they have a certain ways that things that they think about, and this brings about a change in those people, in the vibration or the feeling of what it's like to be amongst those people, how they actually feel, what they actually give off, is the result of the experiences that they conjure and the vibration, if you like. What I mean by vibration, the feel that they have within themselves as a result of their practices. And the feel that they have within themselves are unique to that particular brand of practices. But all of these feelings that we create, all these experiences that we conjure in ourselves, depending on the tradition we're involved with, are fabrications of ideas, are fabrications of thoughts. And I have a story. One day I was at the end of running a meditation retreat, and this friend of mine who was a Buddhist monk, who'd been a Buddhist monk, I think for 30 years or thereabouts, and he came along at the end of the meditation retreat just to join in on the group. And he said, I've just disrobed, meaning I've just given up being a Buddhist monk. I've had gone through this, some sort of ceremony to disrobe. And my question to him, because I was a bit cheeky with him because he was my friend, I said, well, we've taken off the robes, but you don't feel like you've taken out the Buddhist. The Buddhist is still there. Your vibe has not changed at all. And this is something a lot harder to get rid of. You can take the robes off, but how do you then get rid of the indoctrination and the effects of the indoctrination of repeating that manner of idea, that manner of thinking, and most significantly, those meditations for 30 solid years, or whatever years that person does. And of course, he found that a little challenging because he realized what I was saying was absolutely true. That nothing had changed. It was just a ritual to go through this disrobing, but the monk still existed like a ghost inside of the machine of the body. And to resolve that, very, very difficult. Just like it's difficult to resolve any thought-induced imposition on the living organism, on the individual that you are. And so all thought-based techniques produce a certain experience aligned with that belief system or that technique. And without realizing it, you think that is your experience. And of course, in a sense it is, but it is not the experience of you. It's the experience of the product of your thinking, which is completely disconnected from what it is to be you. And it has the effect of changing how it feels to be you into the way that you've been taught you want to be, but that is an escape from and a distraction from the way you really are. So, if a person goes through a process like being a monk for a while, like I was a monk for 7 years or so, and something happened for me where all of that which made up the monk inside of me, this ghost inside of the machine of the body of me, it dissolved at a certain point. And I won't go into the details of that, but as that dissolved, what remained had no use for, no relationship with, and no interest in the information and the beliefs and the concepts of the yogi monk that I had been, that I'd indoctrinated into my system. So consequently, I quite suddenly did not relate personally, experientially, or intelligently to anything, to one iota of all these years of beliefs and practices and, if you like, studies that I'd been involved in. None of it was connected to me. It was all part and parcel of the yogi monk. And the yogi monk, the Buddhist monk, the anything monk, anything that is not the living body is produced through the thoughts and ideas that that individual takes on and imposes on themselves. And this is harmful. It is flat out harmful. But the interesting thing that happens is that, or happened for me, is when that dropped away, all that remained was the body of me and the natural sensations of this body. So anybody that breaks free of an indoctrination on any level, whether it be the indoctrination of their family or the indoctrination of their society or the indoctrination of the cult or religion, which are both the same thing, that you're involved in, then what remains is you. What remains because you still exist, and there you have it. There you have what you are. And so nobody who has this occur to them will ever remain being a monk. No way. So what I'm saying here is there is no such thing as enlightenment or freedom for a person who is still practicing some form of tradition, religion, or induced ideology from the outside in. And I can say this from my own direct experience. And a direct experience is not the same as an induced experience. A direct experience is something that happens from the inside out. It's the outcome of whatever you already are. I say the outcome because not everything that we already are is experienced. Yeah? It's there in the sense of the body, but only as it's activated by external stimulation do different aspects of ourselves come to life and into action from within ourselves. So all approaches to meditation and all techniques to meditate are actually outside in approaches to yourself. And this is a major problem, because the outside-in approach is adding something to yourself that wasn't there to begin with, and that actually has got nothing to do with understanding or being yourself. So what's the alternative? The alternative is it has to be an inside-out expression of yourself. So internally means inside your body. You can't say inside your mind, because your mind is on the outside. Your mind is nothing more than a thought process. And the thought process is always shallow. There's no inside the mind. The mind is an external activity of thinking. It is the most superficial thing about all of us. And the most superficial thing about me and the most superficial thing about you is what we think. On a very basic level, what we think, which comes from what we sense or feel in the body, that which is already there is there before thinking. That depth of sensation is deep, and that is internal, and that is all through every single cell in the body. So you have that, and then you have thought. And thought is the final expression. Thoughts and words are the final expressions of these deeper sensations in the body. So what drives your thinking and your expression is a sensation, a feeling within you. And therefore, it's very important to meditate in a way that is about you. Otherwise, you are just staying on the surface. You can't get deep. So no thought-based meditation has any depth. You can't get depth in your meditation when you're using a traditional meditation, when you're using an approach to yourself that has got nothing to do with yourself, where you are simply introducing ideas and experiences through the repetition of those ideas, conjuring experiences that are completely alien to the one that it is to be you already. If you've been practicing a technique-based meditation, I don't want you to take on what I'm saying as though I'm saying you're doing something wrong. It's not your fault. The trickiness of thought is immense, actually. And you're just doing what you've been taught to do from people that you've trusted, that you assume and believe know what they're talking about. And then the danger of that is that once you take on an instruction from someone in applying an ideology or a technique to somehow alter the way it feels to be you, is that you always achieve altering the way it feels to be you. And so you think it's worked. But by altering the way it feels to be you, you've falsified yourself. You're altering yourself only because you do not and have not for yourself discovered the significance and the importance of being the way you naturally are, not changing that, but learning how to live with that. Changing your experience is problematic in that you are suppressing that which is already going on, and you're artificially imposing, through thinking, another experience, another thought-induced experience, and an experience which is not you, not coming from you, but induced by what you've learnt from outside of yourself. It's the very reason that we're confused, the very reason that we don't have our own sense of ourself, and we end up with no sense of ourself at all with using techniques. Rather, we end up with a fabricated state, and through the repetition of that fabricated state, it simply becomes more and more familiar. And it may be a state we enjoy. I know that when I was a monk, it was probably in one sense, it was the happiest time of my life, between the age of about 18 and 27. I absolutely thrived in it. But I didn't understand what I was doing. I didn't understand because I was green, I was new to it. And most of you who are listening will not really understand, even if you've been meditating for 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 or 40 or 50 years, if you've been using a technique and you're still using it, this indicates you haven't realized the harm this is doing to you, and that it's actually taking you away from yourself as you are, which is actually the only reality of you there is. And your ideas that there are better ways to be than the way you are leads you to apply a technique or an ideology to change yourself to be a better person from the point of view of that ideology, or the point of view of your own desires to not feel whatever distresses or pains or disturbances that led you to searching for a better way to be. But you see, the better way to be is an escape from reality, from the reality of how you actually are. And you can't get to how you are when you form a conclusion and apply that conclusion through the techniques of meditation to being in a different way, to the way you would be if you weren't using that technique on a repetitive and ongoing basis. What I'm sharing here is absolutely unique. It's my own discovery. And it's something that happened automatically of its own volition, not something that I applied to myself. But in fact, it was what I was applying to myself as a monk that eventually caused an eruption, or I don't know if that's what caused it actually, but eventually my natural system, the body of me, fought back, having so many ideas and so many techniques being imposed on the and causing fabrications of experiences and sensations throughout this body which simply aren't natural to it, that didn't allow the natural recovery from the effects of life prior to being a monk, and for the effects of life during being a monk to actually occur. And really, this is really overlooking the most important thing, is that to really understand yourself as you are, you have to go into the areas of yourself that you are most ignorant about. And the areas we are all most ignorant about are our painful areas. And the reason we are the most ignorant about the painful areas of ourself is because we spend our whole life avoiding them, denying them, suppressing them, trying to get away from them, and trying to fabricate states or find ways of being other than in pain. And so consequently, we don't spend time in the experience, in the feelings of those disturbances and pain, and never come to understand them. So they remain a mystery to us. And on top of that, all the healers of the world, the medical, the therapists, whether it's traditional medicines, allopathic medicines, whatever it happens to be, they're busy trying to fix you, trying to change the way you are as well. So religion and medicine are just interested in changing us from what we are in our own state, which is the result of what we've been through in our life, into something which we aren't. And so this is, in both cases, religion, philosophies, or medicine, this is just escapism. And we never get to understand the true nature and significance of the pain or distress that happens to be in the body of us, and the so-called bad ways in which we think and behave. So with the natural meditation of the body, what occurs if we stop applying any ideas? So I'm not teaching anybody anything. I am just showing you how to find everything out for and from yourself. And the only place you will find yourself is on the inside of you, not outside of you. How do we get to that? What's keeping us from that is however we have learned to think about ourselves. And we've learned to think about ourselves from the perspective of being good or bad or right or wrong, higher and lower. And these are just ideologies again. These are just cultural belief systems. And these are the result of ignorance to the deeper nature of ourselves, especially when we're in pain or distress. So whatever has occurred during our life has had varying effects on us. Trauma, massive trauma, can be so much of an effect that we literally divide ourselves in the sense of our memories of ourself. So all of our memories of ourself, of the story of our life, are there, but much of that has been either suppressed or denied or forgotten, and they're the parts that we found impossible to deal with and process at the time. But only the cognitive memory is suppressed during our life, never the felt memory. And that's why after we've been affected, we have changed in the sense of how it feels to be us. So the cognitive memory may not be there, but the felt memory in the body is there. So the body doesn't lie. And the body isn't interested in changing itself into something better. It's only interested in responding and resolving whatever is there in the first place. So what is the significance of any pain or distress in the body is that this results in the way you are today as a person. The way you are today as a person is very important, because the way you are today as a person is the result of all the unresolved effects of your life. All of the unresolved effects of your life are the accumulation of what you've had imposed on you, either through education, through indoctrination, through religion, through spirituality, through various meditation techniques, or the more, I wouldn't say more serious form of harm, but what society would consider more serious forms of harm, of actual abuse throughout your life, actual sexual or physical abuse or mental abuse throughout your life. But as far as the body is concerned, belief systems and imposing beliefs upon a young person is actually a form of abuse, because all of these forms of abuse, what actually makes abuse is that it changes you from what you were born as. It changes you from what you really originated as. It changes you from what you really are into the result of that abuse. And so anything that has changed you from what you really are, in the sense of falsified you, distorted you, damaged you, made it uncomfortable or impossible for you to live as the natural person you were born, at ease with all of your natural sensations, from sexuality through to anger, through to calmness, through to happiness, through to emptiness, through to loss, through to grief, all the natural sensations that every single one of us will experience over and over again throughout our life. When we are damaged in any of these areas, or taught ideologies that prevent us from simply accepting each and every event of life and feeling the effect it has on us, we can't get over anything. If you believe in reincarnation, which is a religious belief system, then you use this to avoid the actual effects of a friend dying, which is your loss, your grief. And if you don't feel that, the reason you won't feel that with a belief system is you keep kidding yourself and indoctrinating yourself over and over again anytime you feel a bit of sadness or a bit of grief into, oh, they've gone to a better place, or some other nonsense that you really don't know at all, but you've chosen to believe it. And so in this sense, belief is harmful, because without that belief, you're just left with your loss. And if you feel your loss or feel your grief, not think about it, not emotionalize it, not dramatize it, but feel it as the physical sensation that is in your body, then you'll discover what it really means to meditate. When you are just feeling whatever sensation is going on in the living body of you, you are in touch with the process of recovery from that feeling, from feeling that way, from the effects of life along the way. And so this natural meditation of the body harbors no belief systems, no ideologies, no possibility for delusion. Whereas Buddhism, Christianity, all spirituality is made up of delusions, made up of ideas and ways to avoid the way you are, to not be the way you are, to control the way you are, the ways in which have been determined by these systems to be wrong. And on top of that, what's imposed is an idea and a practice of how to be the way you're supposed to be. So it's a total suppression followed by a fabrication, or the combination of both tend to go on continuously throughout the life of any religious, spiritual, or meditative person. And this is a confusion. The problem is not the way we are. The problem is our thought-induced mental reactions to the way we are. You don't suffer sadness. You only suffer your complaint about being sad. But if you let yourself feel sad, it's a relief to feel that. You don't actually suffer any physical or psychological pain. You suffer your reactions to that. You don't actually suffer any experience of yourself, your authentic, natural self as it actually is. You suffer your attempts to try and not be natural, to try and not be the way you are. You harm yourself by your judgments and criticisms and fears of these natural sensations. Whereas if you can just feel the sensations as they are, to know those sensations as they are requires that there are no thought descriptions, opinions or attitudes of right, wrong, good or bad, better or worse. None of these attitudes or ideologies can be in place. If they are, you will change the way you're feeling by imposing those ideas and never understand any of the ways in which you feel as they are before changed by those ideas. And we are just a living organism. We know our existence because we feel the sensations of our existence. We feel the sensations of our understanding, of our knowing. We don't think what we know. We know what we know because we feel it in our body. We feel it when we're hungry. We feel it when we're sad. We feel it when we're itchy. We feel it when we're cold. We feel it when we're hot. And this is the only way we can know anything. You can't know anything of the living experience of yourself through thinking. Because thinking is a disassociated, disconnected state. It is not harboring within it any, it doesn't capture within it any sense of the living at all. It's a dead thing. The word sadness doesn't contain a feeling of sadness. The word sensation does not contain what we know to be a sensation. What we know to be a sensation is a physical live experience of our own existence. And that's something that you know as well as I know. We all know this equally. So bringing it back to the body, we come back to the common denominator of us all, and bringing it back to our pain, which is important because this is what we're always trying to get away from. And this keeps us ignorant as to the true nature and the significance of any pain or distress in the body and the true nature of it. This is our opportunity to feel it and thereby resolve, purge, and heal the effects of whatever has affected us in life, leaving us free of those effects, meaning whether it's the effects of beliefs, which is harmful, the effects of indoctrination, which is harmful, the effects of abuse, which is harmful, any effect that has left us changed in how it feels to be us and unable to be at ease with ourselves however we are. That effect is resolved through feeling our discomfort with being ourselves until that discomfort with being ourselves completely resolves itself just by feeling it as it is in the body of us. Now that brings about a recovery of our original state, of exactly how we were when we were born. When I say exactly, I mean that in relevance to we were completely whole. We're born whole. We're born sensitive. Our sensory nature, our sensory abilities are super heightened up until the time we learn to think. And then when we learn to think, we're taught what to think. We're taught what to think about ourselves, which we start to think about ourselves, and these are not even our thoughts. They're not thoughts about us. They're what our parents, our teachers, the religions, or the cultures of the world have actually told us we're supposed to think. So we think these ways about ourselves, and we criticize ourselves as we've been taught to, according to that religion or that culture. And we praise ourselves as we've been taught to, according to that religion or culture. And that way of thinking about ourselves, as we've been taught to think about ourselves, induces a completely distorted and perverted experience of what it really feels like to be us. And we no longer can feel ourselves as we are. We're only left with the states that have been induced through the imposing of these ideas on ourselves. And we don't like that. And we think we don't like ourselves because we think that's us, but that's not us. That's what we're experiencing, but that's not us. That's the result of our thinking. And that thinking is harmful. And that is why we don't like being us. But that's not us. We haven't begun to experience us as we truly are until we stop thinking about ourselves and drop beneath that thinking into the actual self-evident, automatic, continual movement of the living sensation of being whatever it is we are. Not who we are, what we are. And what we are is what we were born as, a living organism. And when you come back into the sensations of yourself, you discover you were never really away from them. You never really escaped them in the first place. You just disconnected and disassociated and detached yourself from them. And coming back to the body alone, just sitting still, not using any technique at all. The body-based meditation is the realization that the mind is nothing more than an activity of thinking, and that thinking is nothing more than an image. So neither the mind nor the images of thought actually exist. They are just the off-gassing of the sensations from which they arise in the body, of the feelings from which they come into being from the body. So this activity of thinking, which we label as a mind, is very confusing, because when we use that label of a mind, we actually think there's someone or something there that's doing the thinking, but the body is doing the thinking. It's just because we've so disconnected from the body of us, we've lost this innate understanding and direct experience of exactly how the body thinks, how the body itself produces all of our thinking. And it starts as a sensation. A sensation is a pocket or a mass of information that we have picked up through our senses from the world outside of us, or that has been inside of us and accumulated inside of us throughout our life. And that sensation is the memory of our life, including the information of our life today. And the information of our life today is the stimulus to us from life outside of us, which produces our response to that stimulus. That's all a sensory interaction. But as the sensations form into feelings and expressions of those sensations, they form into the words, into the thoughts, and then the words and the actions. Or they just form into the thoughts. And then the thoughts come to their own end, because the thoughts are the smoke from the fire of life that you are. So when you meditate with some understanding of what I've just been saying, what I would ask you to do for you to discover the reality of what I've been talking about for and from yourself almost immediately, so you don't have to believe me. Just try this. And that is just sit physically still and don't do anything, which means don't apply any ideas, any thoughts, any reactions to the way it feels in the body of you. Whatever you feel like internally, whether there's pain, whether there's disturbance, whether there's calmness, whatever it is, just be with the feeling of that. Now that feeling is not something you're producing, is it? That I'm wanting you to connect with is that the condition in which you currently are. And when you sit there, you get in touch with the body of you. Don't drift off into your thinking. Don't produce experiences through your fabrications of meditation. This is just an escape from the reality of you. Just come back. Just be with. And when you come back to the sensations, you realize you've never left them. You just thought you had because you became so involved in your thinking. But the sensation of you is going to be there, has been there, and will always be there as long as you are alive. So being with that sensation, being inside yourself is the only place you ever really are. There is no way to be outside yourself. You just implode into a thought about yourself until you disassociate and disconnect from the living organism that you are. And you think you're outside of yourself in some imaginary experience. But even the imaginary experience is inside yourself. It just feels like you're outside it because that's what you've chosen to imagine. That's the idea that you started with in your process of imagining. And so you can actually take that idea to such an extent that you feel as though the idea is all there is to you. But it's not even you, and it's not happening outside of the body of you. It's happening because of the body of you. So when you sit still, you'll notice, and most meditators become upset with this to begin with, simply because they haven't had any understanding of what's going on. When they're sitting to meditate and there's all this random thinking occurring, so they try to apply techniques to suppress or alter that random thinking to control their thinking. But you don't really know why you're thinking, why there is all this random overthinking. It's absolutely essential that you let that happen. Because as that happens, there's only one reason why it's happening, and that is because the body is throwing all of that out. The body's finished with that information. The body is purging and healing of itself, in itself, healing itself of all of these distorted effects of the experiences of your life that have done you harm, that have falsified you, that have disconnected you, that have disassociated you from being you as you naturally are. And so the body doesn't want this. So what does the body do? It throws this stuff out. So when you're sitting, any nonsense thinking is going to come out, because nonsense thinking is not what the body needs. Any unresolved issues of your life will occur, whether it's from yesterday or eventually from the very early days of your life. All of this has to come out of the body. Why? Stay with me now. Why is this random thinking happening? It's not a problem. It's just that you get caught up in the thinking. You have nothing to learn from that thinking. It's coming out of you, so all the information that it is an expression of is already known as a felt sensation where it's held in the body. The body of you already knows that stuff. It's memory. So let it come out, and it flows. And there's all this thinking going on. Now, don't worry about the content of that thinking, but do notice and do be with the feelings that come with that thinking, the way in which you feel in and of yourself whilst that random thinking is going on. And you'll find you have all sorts of ways in which you do feel. When different thoughts are occurring, it will bring up different types. It will bring with it different feelings. And these feelings are your nostalgias. These feelings are your associations with the stories of these thoughts. Or even if you don't follow or understand or recognize any of the stories, if it's disturbing you, if you're feeling disturbance, whatever it is you're feeling, if you're feeling anything as those thoughts are arising, you will find yourself drawn to those thoughts, concerned by those thoughts, annoyed by those thoughts. But it's the feeling in it that gives them any power over you. Whereas when there's no feeling in a thought, then it doesn't relate to you at all. So you can easily see it for what it is, nothing more than an image that doesn't exist in its own right. And you just ignore it. It has no effect on you. But the thoughts that describe things or remind you of things that you have not resolved, it triggers the unresolved feelings, which are the attachments and the identifications with that thought, with that story of you. So letting that story come out of the body of you as it does naturally, not trying to do this. You can't do this. You don't know what stories you are locked in. You don't know what you're attached to. Only when that comes up, as if all this thinking going on inside of you, and then you feel how you are associated with these thoughts that are occurring simply because of the way in which you feel as they're coming out of you, as they're releasing from where they've originally been held as sensations in the body of you. Now, what is the real meaning of attachment? And what really is attaching us is identification. Those ideas, those thoughts, those concepts that we identify with, including the identification with any Buddhist concept, the identification with any Christian concept, with any Muslim concept, with any Hindu concept, with any yogi concept, any ideology, any thoughts that you have added to yourself have falsified you. You are not a thought. You are a living organism. You are not an idea. You are a living organism. And that living organism doesn't need ideas. It doesn't need any thinking other than for the purely mechanical purposes in life. But by introducing thinking in the attempt to try and understand yourself, you've completely disconnected from yourself in thoughts about yourself. When you're thinking about yourself, you are separate from that which you are thinking to, so you have no way to understand yourself if you can't even truly feel how it is in here to be you. You distort it through your thinking, and when you meditate, all that distortion starts to purge out of the body because that's all it wants to do. But you have to sit physically still. There'll be a physical pain, and out of that physical pain, which is a sensation again in the body, the story of that pain, that the reason for that pain will show itself eventually. And that's that pain expressing itself into the verbal or mental expressions of itself. But feeling it as how you begin to resolve your identification. It's actually not how you begin to, it's totally how you resolve your identification, your nostalgias, your feelings within all of that random thinking that's going on, till eventually, by feeling those feelings, they end up dissipating. And when the feelings that attach you or identify you with any thought process that's going on finally purge from your system, the thoughts that are produced by those feelings and held in repetition by your association with the thoughts and the feelings, those thoughts, once the feeling comes to an end, which is all you have to concern yourself with, is just feeling it to its end. Any thoughts that are associated with and produced by those feelings completely dissipate. They disappear because they never were there in the first place. They're just images. Images don't actually exist. So you realize there's no thought there. There's just images. But the important thing is allowing this random thinking to occur and staying with the feeling and the disturbances that it may be causing you to be having so much thought occurring. This is how, by feeling that, this is how you resolve all identifications with all the different things that you've built into your persona or the life from the story of your whole life, and all the traumas and all the effects that have been held in your body because you've separated from them through your reaction to them, through your suppression of them. All of these begin to erupt from the body, and feeling those produces also the thoughts that are associated with those, that come from those. So don't interfere with this natural healing process, because where that will leave you is less and less and less identified with all of these ideas about you, until these don't mean anything to you anymore, because they only mean something to you due to the way they make you feel. When they no longer make you feel that way, or they are no longer involved with the feeling of you, because you resolve that pain, you've resolved that nostalgia, you resolved that distress, you've resolved that guilt, you resolved that anger, you resolved whatever it is that is bothering you, simply by feeling it in the body of you, not identifying it, not labeling it, just feeling whatever is there. And it will be, after a while, just a fairly continuous, similar state of sensation. And that's when it's really processing. When you're thinking and labeling and repetition of techniques to think and oppose those thoughts, to think about and oppose those thoughts is no longer there, then you can really go deep. And this is the depth of your meditation, when you simply allow the body to do it all. And that's all the body wants to do. Only the body can meditate, because only the body is in the present.
Thanks for watching. If you want to take your meditation and healing journey deeper, download my meditation app Undo, which is available exclusively on my website undoapp.com. Okay, bye for now.